I often wonder. If I hadn't looked at my smartwatch that night, would I still be living inside the perfect lie? My name is Cassia Doyle, and for 4 years, I thought I had everything. A charming, successful husband, a sleek apartment overlooking the skyline, and the kind of marriage people envy. But perfection is often the best disguise. And mine shattered in the quietest, most ordinary moment. A blink, a glitch, a signal not meant for me. It was past midnight. I was half asleep when my smartwatch buzzed softly and lit up. A video call had connected. I didn't touch anything. It just played. On the screen, in the grainy blue light, was my husband, Holden Brandt, in his office, speaking to someone I didn't recognize. "Don't worry," he whispered. "She won't suspect a thing. The plan's moving exactly as we need it to." I didn't breathe. My body froze as his words cut through me like cold steel, and beside him, the man nodded. Sharp suit, cold eyes. I'd never seen him before, but I'd never forget his name either. Dean Lockhart. He would become the name that echoed in my nightmares. Holden wasn't just hiding something, he was orchestrating something. And I was the target. Sometimes the person holding your hand every night is the one plotting your destruction. Hit subscribe if you believe in trusting your instincts. That night, Cassia didn't sleep. She didn't move. She lay there beside Holden, feeling his breath, pretending not to hear the way his voice had sounded. Measured, cold, deceitful. A stranger's voice in a familiar shell. The screen of her smartwatch had long gone dark, but the scene kept replaying behind her eyes. She turned her back to him, her heart thudding like it was trying to warn her. Had there been signs? Holden had always insisted on handling their investments. He'd put the apartment under his name for tax purposes. He'd told her not to worry about the offshore account setup because those things were too messy. And he always locked his phone before kissing her goodnight. She had wanted to believe it was love. She had wanted to believe him. But now, everything tasted like poison. The next morning, she would begin looking into the one thing Holden always told her to ignore: the money. And that's when the unraveling would begin. The next morning, Holden made coffee. He moved through the kitchen with his usual calm, rolled-up sleeves, perfectly timed gestures, humming softly to himself. He placed the cup in front of her and smiled. "You didn't sleep well," he said. Cassia forced a quiet smile. "Just restless, I guess." He kissed her cheek and left for work. The moment the door clicked shut, her face dropped. Her hands tightened around the cup. Her breath released like it had been caged. She opened her laptop and logged into the joint bank account, the one Holden always told her not to worry about. The balance was much lower than she remembered. She clicked through the transaction history. Dozens of transfers, all between $700 and $1,200, just small enough not to trigger alerts. All were under her name. Then she saw one that froze her. Ventura Consulting, International Transfer, Belize. She opened a new tab and searched. Ventura was not a domestic service. It was an offshore financial firm based in Belize. She dug deeper. Corporate registry, business filings. Her name appeared as a founding partner. Cassia stepped back from the table, heart racing. Her identity had been used without her knowledge. Someone had created a company overseas in her name. This wasn't hidden spending. This was financial fraud. Holden had done more than lie. He had built something dangerous, and she was the center of it. By noon, she had printed every transaction. Statements, screenshots, highlighted transfers. She placed them in a folder and stared at it like it was a weapon. For a moment, she considered going to the police. But Holden was smart, respected, careful. If she moved too soon, he would twist it, make her look paranoid, and bury the truth in charm. She needed someone who understood how people like him operated, someone who didn't play by traditional rules. She called Margot Lee. They hadn't spoken in months, but Margot had once survived a man just like Holden. "Margot, I need help," Cassia said. There was no hesitation on the other end. "Come over. Bring everything." That afternoon, Cassia met Margot in a quiet cafe with no cameras, no waiters hovering. Across the table sat a woman with cropped hair, sharp features, and an unreadable expression. Her name was Maya. "She doesn't need a lawyer," Margot said. "She needs someone who knows how to find what others try to hide." Maya scanned the documents Cassia had collected. "Your husband set up a shell company using your name. Dean Lockhart is involved. He has a pattern, but no one's pinned him yet." Cassia's voice was barely above a whisper. "Can you help me stop them?" "I don't stop people," Maya replied. "I expose them." That evening, Cassia returned home before Holden. She locked the printed files in her drawer and washed the coffee cups like nothing had changed. When Holden walked in, he smiled, loosened his tie, and asked how her day was. Cassia looked him in the eye and answered, "Productive." Her voice didn't waver. Her posture was calm. But something inside her had shifted completely. Holden had no idea what was coming. Because now, Cassia wasn't waiting for the truth. She was preparing to drag it into the light herself. The next morning, Cassia sat in her car for a long time before turning the engine on. She hadn't spoken to her brother in over 6 years. Not since their mother's funeral. Not since she told him to stay out of her life. But things had changed. She needed answers. And more than that, she needed someone who could see through Holden the way she couldn't. Rowan Doyle was her half-brother. Same mother, different fathers. He had always been sharp, distant, and angry in a way that made others uncomfortable. After leaving home, he disappeared into investigative journalism and underground reporting. Cassia used to think he was paranoid. Now she wondered if he had just seen the truth earlier than the rest of them. She parked 2 blocks away from the address Maya had tracked down. It wasn't much. A converted industrial loft with peeling paint and no doorbell. She hesitated, then knocked. Heavy footsteps approached. The door opened just enough to reveal him, older now, rougher around the edges, but still carrying that quiet intensity. "Cass," he said. His voice didn't soften, but it didn't push her away either. "I need your help," she replied. He opened the door fully and stepped aside. Inside, the room was dimly lit and cluttered. Walls covered in newspaper clippings, thumbtacks, red thread, and sticky notes. She felt like she had walked into someone else's brain. Rowan sat down on the edge of a couch and motioned for her to speak. "I think Holden is using my name to launder money," she said. "There's an offshore company in Belize. I didn't sign anything, but it's all under me." Rowan narrowed his eyes. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know. Maya, someone I met through Margot, found a network linked to a guy named Dean Lockhart. She said he's clean on the surface but dirty underneath." Rowan stood and moved to his desk. He typed something quickly, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "I know Dean," he muttered. "He's good, covers his tracks well, works in overlapping jurisdictions where banking regulations don't talk to each other." Cassia's throat tightened. "Holden's connected to him." "I'm sure he is," Rowan said, "and if he's using your name, he's betting you won't fight back." He looked up, eyes serious now. "Do you have documents, paper trails, logins?" Cassia nodded and handed over a flash drive Maya had prepared. "Everything we've gathered so far." Rowan plugged it in and studied the contents in silence for several minutes. Then he leaned back in his chair. This isn't amateur work, he said. Your husband is part of a system, not just stealing but erasing his footprints while building liability in your name. And he's almost done. Cassia swallowed hard. Then what do? We get ahead of him, Rowan said. We get the timeline, find the weak point, and rip it open. You'll need to act like everything's fine. Smile at him. Let him believe you still trust him. I can do that. No, you'll have to be better than that. You'll have to be him. Think like him. Lie like him. Until he walks straight into your hands. Cassia nodded slowly. Where do we start? Rowan clicked open a video recording pulled from a secure financial server. A woman in a banking office could be seen filing paperwork. Dean Lockhart stood beside her. The timestamp was dated 2 months before Cassia's supposed authorization. This, Rowan said, this is what gets us in the door. He filed this in your name before the account even legally existed, and now we have it on record. Cassia stared at the screen. The calm she wore on the outside didn't match the storm moving through her chest. But there was something else growing too, a slow, rising sense of control. For the first time since that night her smartwatch lit up. She didn't feel like prey. She felt like someone sharpening her teeth. 3 days later, Holden came home early. Cassia was already at the dining table, pretending to review a work report. He walked in with a leather folder in his hand and a cautious smile on his face. Hey, he said. I've been thinking. We should go over some of our assets, just to make things easier. You know, in case anything unexpected happens. Cassia raised her head slowly and nodded. You mean like reorganizing things? Holden sat across from her. Exactly. Consolidate a few accounts, put certain titles under one name, makes taxes easier, estate planning smoother, nothing complicated. I'll handle the paperwork. You just need to sign. Cassia blinked as if surprised, but then gave a soft smile. That makes sense. Holden's eyebrows lifted slightly, not expecting her to agree so easily. Really? She nodded. You've always managed things well. I trust your judgment. She said it with just the right amount of softness. Inside, she was watching every muscle in his face, every flicker in his eyes. He believed her. That was all she needed. He reached into the folder and pulled out the documents. These are just draft versions, he said, sliding them toward her. Cassia picked them up and glanced over the pages. Legal language, real estate terms, bank account numbers. She couldn't understand all of it, but she didn't need to. She only needed time. Can I look at these overnight? She asked. Of course, Holden said too quickly. There's no rush. The moment he left for work the next morning, she packed the documents into a sealed envelope and drove straight to Maya. They met in a coffee shop outside the city. Maya took the folder and started scanning the pages into her tablet. These aren't just transfers, she said. He's moving all joint assets into an offshore trust. Once it's signed, you lose access to everything. Even your name's been reduced to a secondary beneficiary. Cassia kept her hands still. Can we stop it? Maya looked up. We can do better than that. We can flip it on him. But we'll need someone who can access their filing system before he submits this to the International Clearing Agency. Cassia thought of Rowan. That night, she called him. Rowan didn't ask questions. He met them in a low-rise building that smelled like damp paper and coffee grounds. The three of them sat around a scratched-up table while Maya outlined the plan. Rowan would intercept the submission window and insert a mirrored version of the trust. Everything Holden tried to move would land in a secured, legal holding that Cassia had already claimed. Legally, it would be as if Holden had gifted her full ownership. If this works, Rowan said, he won't even realize what happened until it's too late. And if it doesn't? Cassia asked. Maya smiled slightly. Then we take it to court and let the timeline destroy him. Either way, he loses. Cassia folded the copy of the documents and slipped them back into the folder. She had less than 48 hours to act normal. Smile. Sleep next to him. Let him believe she was still in the dark. That night, Holden poured her a glass of wine and leaned in close. "Thanks for trusting me," he said. "This is going to make things so much easier." Cassia held his gaze and smiled. "I'm glad you're looking out for us." She clinked her glass against his, and as she took a sip, her eyes stayed locked on his. Inside, she felt nothing but steel. 3 days passed. Cassia kept her routine. She cooked dinner, replied to emails, nodded along to Holden's updates about work. But beneath the surface, the structure of her marriage had already collapsed. She had just become an actress in its ruins. Holden, unaware, moved through the apartment with casual ease. The signed paperwork sat quietly in a drawer, untouched, waiting for him to submit. And Cassia waited too, knowing Maya and Rowan were ready. But Holden had another move, one she didn't expect. It came as a message from her assistant at work. "Cassia, I think you need to see this." It was a link to an anonymous forum. A thread titled, "Corporate CFO Embezzling Funds to Hide Money from Spouse?" The post was vague, but not enough. It described a female executive, mid-30s, recently married, used company resources to funnel cash through fake consulting deals. In the comments, someone wrote, "I know who this is. It's Cassia Doyle." Cassia sat frozen at her desk. The thread had over 500 views. Screenshots were spreading. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. Her phone buzzed again. Maya. "I'm seeing it now," Maya said. "It's Holden, or someone close to him. This is a smear campaign." Cassia's chest tightened. "Can this hurt me legally?" "Not if we get ahead of it. But if you stay quiet, it could build traction. People believe what they see first." Cassia stared at the screen. Her hands were steady, but her breathing was shallow. She left the office early and drove to Rowan's building. Inside, she slammed the car door harder than she meant to. Rowan read the post silently, then leaned back. "It's not just about financial control anymore. He's attacking your reputation. He's trying to make sure that when you fight back, no one listens." Cassia nodded once. "Then I'll make sure they do." That night, she met with Maya in a rented office 2 floors above Holden's financial firm. They worked past midnight, drafting a cease and desist order and compiling every shred of digital evidence tying the anonymous post to Holden's home IP address. The next morning, it was sent to his inbox. An hour later, Holden walked into their apartment early, face neutral, but his eyes harder than usual. Cassia stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee. "You sent a lawyer after me?" he asked. "I sent a warning," she replied. Holden laughed quietly. "You're playing a dangerous game." Cassia turned to him. "So are you." There was a long silence. Then he leaned in, voice low. "You don't know what I'm capable of." Cassia didn't flinch. "Actually, I'm starting to." Holden left without finishing his sentence. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames. Cassia stood still in the quiet, her hand wrapped around the coffee mug. The room was silent again, but her world had shifted. He was scared. And scared men made sloppy choices. She just had to stay one step ahead. 3 days after the cease and desist letter was sent, Cassia received a large white envelope. It was delivered by courier, hand-signed, and marked confidential. She didn't need to open it to know what it was. Inside were court documents. Holden had filed a lawsuit. The claims were sharp and direct. He accused her of financial fraud, misuse of joint funds, and intentional concealment of marital assets. He was demanding 50% of all property, including the apartment and monthly spousal support. The filing was aggressive. It was meant to shock her, to wear her down before the real battle began. Cassia didn't blink. She picked up the phone and called Maya, then Rowan. They met that evening in a quiet corner of a private law library. Maya spread the court documents across the table, scanning them one by one. Her face remained unreadable. Rowan stood behind her, arms crossed, tapping one foot slowly. "He filed in his name only," Maya said. "But look at this." She pointed to the signature block. A second name appeared beneath Holden's. Dean Lockhart. Cassia leaned forward. "He brought Dean in as co-plaintiff?" Maya nodded. "Dean claims you forged financial documents that harmed his business reputation and exposed him to investigation." Cassia clenched her fists. "So they're attacking from both sides." Rowan didn't look concerned. He picked up a separate file from his bag and dropped it on the table. "We've been waiting for this." Inside were the forensic reports, time-stamped records from the Belize registry showing that the company in Cassia's name had been established weeks before her signature had ever been submitted. Even better, the same timestamp proved that the bank account attached to the company didn't exist at the time the first transactions were logged. It was proof of fraud, fabrication, and now it was admissible. "We file a countersuit," Maya said calmly. "Defamation, identity misuse, and submission of falsified documents. We demand damages, and we make it public." Cassia exhaled slowly. "Let's do it." The paperwork was filed 2 days later. Maya crafted it with precision. The countersuit outlined how Holden Reynolds and Dean Lockhart conspired to create false financial documents in Cassia's name to manipulate court proceedings and gain access to protected assets. Attached were server logs, document metadata, and verified statements from the Belize financial registrar. The legal team didn't stop there. Maya filed a request for emergency protective injunctions against both men, freezing any further financial activity under Cassia's identity until the case was resolved. When the documents hit Holden's inbox, he didn't respond, but his lawyer did. The reply came in the form of a negotiation request. Holden was trying to settle. Cassia said no. She didn't want silence. She wanted the truth spoken in open court. The courtroom was cold and quiet. The kind of silence that made every breath feel louder than it should. Cassia sat at the plaintiff's table with Maya beside her, hands folded in front of her, eyes locked straight ahead. Across the room, Holden adjusted his tie. He looked calm, collected, polished as always. But his hands betrayed him. The way they gripped the armrest, knuckles tightening, skin whitening. Dean Lockhart sat behind him, silent, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then the hearing began. Holden's lawyer went first, presenting his case with smooth arguments and confident tone. He described Cassia as manipulative, financially secretive, and deceptive. He claimed she had forged documents to shift assets and jeopardized Dean Lockhart's investments through fraud. Holden sat still through it all, nodding occasionally, acting like a man wronged by a woman he once trusted. When it was their turn, Maya stood. Her voice was calm, but the words hit like steel. She presented the timeline. She laid out the company formation dates, the bank logs, the metadata from the signed forms. Every piece of evidence was dated, time-stamped, and validated by third-party auditors. Then came the video. Rowan had obtained it from an internal banking surveillance system in Belize. On the screen, Dean Lockhart appeared, standing at a desk with a clerk. He handed over forms bearing Cassia's name. The timestamp on the video was from 2 weeks before the date the account tied to that form legally existed. The courtroom shifted. People leaned forward. The judge raised an eyebrow. "This transaction," Maya said, pointing to the screen, "was processed before the account was even active, before it even had a digital record in the bank's system. That is not an error. That is fabrication. Holden's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled it. He asked for clarification, and Maya calmly explained how the forms were reverse-dated and planted, linking them directly to Dean's IP address and Holden's private email account. There was silence. The judge took a long pause, then looked at Holden directly. Mr. Brandt, based on the evidence submitted and the forensic reports, the court finds that the documents used in your claim were falsified. Your lawsuit is hereby dismissed. Additionally, the matter of document fabrication will be referred for further legal review and possible criminal investigation. Holden didn't speak. His face twitched, jaw clenched, lips pressed so tightly they turned pale. Dean shifted in his seat, no longer expressionless, now visibly nervous. The judge turned to Maya. All protective injunctions remain in place until further notice. Ms. Doyle's counterclaim will proceed to a formal hearing. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Holden stood up slowly. His eyes locked on Cassia, but she didn't flinch. She met his stare with a quiet certainty that made his shoulders tighten. He turned away and left without a word. Dean followed him, eyes down, silent like a man walking into his own shadow. Cassia remained seated for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. She wasn't smiling, but inside, she felt the first real breath of relief. It wasn't just about winning. It was about the truth finally being louder than the lies. The apartment feels quieter now. Not empty. Just still. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel like loss, but like space finally cleared for something better. I sit by the window at night with a glass of wine in my hand, watching the city blink around me. The noise is out there. Inside, I'm learning to enjoy the silence again. Holden moved out the week after the hearing. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't need to. His absence was louder than anything he could have said. Maya filed a follow-up claim for damages. Rowan passed everything to a federal investigator. Dean Lockhart disappeared from public view. There are whispers of indictments coming, but I no longer check the news waiting for his name to appear. Justice has started to move, and I don't need to hold the sword anymore. I've returned to work. Quietly. Deliberately. My name has cleared. The rumors faded once the truth surfaced. The deepfake video vanished from the internet as fast as it had spread, and the silence of those who once doubted me speaks louder than any apology. Eliza, my mentor, the one who once told me that survival is not the same as healing, invited me for coffee last week. She smiled when I walked in and said, "You carry yourself differently now." I told her it's because I finally feel like I'm walking on my own path. Not one designed for me. Not one carved through someone else's control. Maya's still in touch. She doesn't speak often, but when she does, her words land with clarity. "You didn't win because you were angry," she told me one night. "You won because you were patient and smart. That's a rare combination." Rowan checks in every few days. We talk more now. Not just about what happened, but about growing up. About the things we didn't understand until it was too late. We're rebuilding something that was once cracked by silence. As for me, I'm not in a hurry to move on. Not in the way people expect. I don't want to date. I don't want to redefine myself by someone new. I want to wake up every day and know that my decisions are mine. My finances are mine. My peace is mine. There's a different kind of power in quiet recovery. In not needing to explain. In not seeking validation. I used to think strength came from standing your ground in front of others. Now I understand it's in standing your ground when no one is watching. Sometimes I still remember the night my smartwatch lit up. The voice, the plan, the way my chest tightened. That moment was real. But so is this one. And this one feels better. I'm Cassia Doyle. I was never supposed to fight back. I was supposed to disappear under the weight of their plan. But instead, I exposed it. I burned it down. And I walked away with my name, my freedom, and a life that belongs to me. That will always be enough.